But in your book, you give a history of austerity as being kind of a bulwark against socialist movements in post-World War I Britain and Italy. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of how economists use austerity to crush successful socialist movements?
Yeah, so I consider myself a historical political economist, meaning that really I think that the categories and concepts we can refine to understand the present circumstances can be found in certain historical moments in which certain conditions were less normalized than today. So this is the typical example of how, we kind of take for capitalism for granted as the starting point of anything we do. We don't even really mention it, and it's kind of, the rules of the game that are just so naturalized. And what I actually show historically is that just 100 years ago, more or less, the system was under under a very serious existential crisis. The Great War, so the First World War, ended in 1918, bringing with it a complete subversion of the pillars of capitalism itself. The two pillars of capitalism are wage relations and private property of the means of production and private command over investment. These two pillars were radically challenged after the First World War, but the majority of citizens, and this was happening not just, in revolutionary Eastern Europe, but in the hub of Western capitalism. And I look at specifically Britain and Italy, but similar situation was happening also in the United States. And what you see is that really the war had shown how political economic decisions were and how exploitation was perpetuated through political decisions by the state. And in this way, as I show in my book, The Capital Order, that came out now 2 years ago, but it's getting translated a lot. Here it is. Basically, in The Capital Order, the first part of the book is all about reconstructing all these plurality of alternatives that had emerged after the First World War, concrete ones, right? So
Mhm.
workers' councils, huge mobilization to put social resources above the priority of profits, guild socialism, cooperative movements, a variety of projects that were really taking over society in a serious way, right? Antonio Gramsci was at the time leading the movement in Italy of the workers' councils. They had occupied all of the factories in Italy for over a month, and workers were just self-managing production and distribution of resources. And the state authorities had very little capacity to actually, stop this from happening. In this revolutionary moment, of course, the elite is very strong in organizing to push back. And what I show is that austerity, as we know it today, and we'll define it in a second, austerity is very, very powerful now, as it was then, to really tie the hands of the majority of people who demanded serious alternatives. So, what you saw is that experts met with government officials at these first international financial conferences in Brussels in 1920 and Genoa in 1922. They came up with a very, very hardcore austerity code that was summarized in the motto consume less, produce more, of course, for the
Mm.
workers, not for the capitalists. And it delivered very well in fundamentally killing the bargaining power of the workers, in increasing unemployment, in creating a sense of loss of economic support for alternatives, and thus basically the quashing of all these experiments. So the point being that if we understand the historical role of austerity in preserving capital as a social relation, right? And this is very important. What does Marx tell us? What is the most important intuition of the critique of political economy of Marx? Is to say capital as we see it in expressed in money and GDP growth and wealth is just the expression of something much more fundamental, which is the social relation by which the majority of us have no alternative but to go work for a wage, right? And especially often a low wage. So this fact that the majority is under this subordinated condition during the the majority of the hours we are alive is the source of this value that then enriches the very few, right? So this social relation that is often questioned, and there's nothing natural or fixed about it, actually is very oppressive and very harmful for the majority. This relation needs to be protected, and the best way to do it is through austerity, because austerity increases market dependence by making it such that we need more money in our pockets if we want to survive, if we want to pay rent, if we want to buy food, if we want to get cured, if we want to send our kids to school. And thus it helps the purpose of maintaining the class relations that are functional to the type of to the type of economy we know as the only one possible, which is not the only one possible, but it is actively maintained by the state through austerity.